Okra is easy to grow, drought tolerant, and delicious. If you've never tried it, I'll show you why every hot climate grower should have this in their garden. I'll show you how to grow it, what to grow with it, a surprising use for it, and I'll even cook my favorite okra recipe for you. Trust me, this is one of my favorites for a reason. I'm Angela from Growing in the Garden. My garden's in Mesa, Arizona. I want to help you succeed, even if you're gardening in tough conditions. Okra is a heat-loving annual that grows up to 6 feet tall and 3 feet wide. It thrives in full sun and loves warm and hot temperatures. Okra is in the mallow family. That includes crops like roselle hibiscus, cotton, even cocoa. Those crops all love hot temperatures. If you look at the blooms of the roselle and okra plant, they'll look very similar and you won't be surprised that they're in the same family. Mahogany splendor hibiscus. The leaves and blooms look a lot alike. When you're deciding which type to grow, you can't go wrong. Most varieties grow really well. This is one of the most popular types, Clemson spineless. People like it because of its spineless pods, and it also has a short growing season, which makes it a good choice for cold and hot seasons. Another popular choice for hot climates is Texas Hill Country Red. This is an heirloom variety originally from Texas, and it's specifically adapted for hot, dry climates. Okra likes warm temperatures, so wait to plant it until temperatures have warmed up in the spring. The soil should be at least 70 degrees. In the low desert, we plant beginning mid-March all the way through May, and this is one crop that you could probably keep planting throughout the summer. Don't be afraid to plant from seed. They'll sprout quickly in the warm soil. Plant a couple of seeds about 1 inch deep and 12 to 18 inches apart. Once those seedlings emerge, thin to the strongest seedling so that there's just one in each square. You can go every other square to give the plants even more room. If you live in a colder climate or have a shorter growing season, start seeds indoors 4 to 6 weeks before the time you'll plant outside. Okra grows best in well-drained, loamy soil. If you have heavy clay soil, mix in some compost to improve drainage. If the soil is really rich, you'll get lots of leaves but fewer blooms, so don't add any fertilizer. Okra grows best in a location with plenty of sun, at least 6 to 8 hours, and it's one of a handful of plants that can take full Arizona sun, so don't be afraid to plant this one in the sunlight. After planting and those seedlings emerge, it seems like it takes a little while to get going, and then all of a sudden that plant is going to take off. Okra is pretty drought tolerant, but does best with deep watering. Let that water seep at least 8 to 12 inches into the soil to encourage those roots to grow deep. And then let the top several inches dry out before watering again. Mulching around the plants helps keep the moisture in. You might see what looks like crystals on the leaves or the fruit. Don't worry, these are totally normal and serve as a defense mechanism. Don't be afraid to prune okra back. These plants were growing really tall and having trouble with the monsoon winds. I cut them back, and now there's several lower branches with fruit growing on all of them. If you want to cut back, cut just above a node and growth will form below that point. After this one broke off in a monsoon, I cut it off, and then 2 other branches formed at the base, and now there's fruit growing on both of those stems. If the plants are growing really tall, you might need to stake them. But don't be afraid to prune off any other branches or cut off leaves. This plant is hardy and will send out new growth everywhere. It can take a couple of months, but once those plants start flowering, it's time to start harvesting. Harvest every day because the best flavor comes from the young, tender pods. You want to catch them when they're young and about 2 or 3 inches long. But if you get some that get too long, don't worry, I've got a great way to use them that I'll tell you about later. 2 to 3 inches is the best size because they're still tender. Once they get larger, the insides become fibrous and they're tough to eat. But when they're young and tender, they are so good. It really just takes a couple of days. So if you see one that's close to being ready, I go ahead and harvest it because it's better to have it too small than too big. Once they start producing, you're gonna get fruit for about 10 or 12 weeks, and then it will start to slow down. When that happens, you can cut the plant off at the base and let the roots break down in the soil and add that plant to your compost. Not only is okra easy to grow, it's one of the easiest crops to save seeds from. At the end of the season, leave a few pods on the plant until they're fully brown, and then cut them off, put them in a paper sack. Those seeds will dry inside the pod. When it's fully dry, you can open up that pod and enjoy all the seeds to share with friends or plant again next year. Because okra grows so well over the summer, I put it to work as a companion plant. Let me show you how. Okra grows tall. It can provide natural shade or support for other crops. I grow tepary beans or other climbing beans like cowpeas up the stalks. The traditional three sisters is corn, bean, and squash. But because corn can be tricky, at least for me to grow, I like to substitute okra for that third sister. Beans can grow up the stalk, and those leaves can shade the squash. Take advantage of okra's height and grow crops that grow low underneath. Something like sweet potatoes can cover that soil and grow with okra as a companion plant. Okra has a long growing season and will keep producing into the fall. But because our seasons are short, I like to get a jump on the next growing season. These leaves will shade the soil so I can plant a cool season like beets underneath. And then when okra is done, I'll cut it off at the base, and the beets will have all of that sunlight when temperatures are a little bit cooler. Any of those plant combinations will help you make the most of your garden space. If you don't like eating okra, plant it anyway. It can act as a cover crop during the hottest months of the year, shading your soil and allowing the soil to be alive and growing underneath. The blooms attract bees and pollinators and bring life to your hot summer garden. When you've harvested your okra, it's going to be easy to tell which ones are ready to eat and nice and tender, and which ones are too fibrous to eat. When you cut into the okra, it should cut easily. If the okra is a little bit larger and getting fibrous, when you start to cut, it's going to be more like you're sawing through that okra. But that's okay. I've got a way that you can use your tough okra and your tender okra. The smaller ones are nice and tender. We're going to save those to eat. But the ends of the smaller ones and any tough ones, we're going to save and make okra water. Okra has so many health benefits, and making it into okra water is an easy way to get those benefits. The recipe couldn't be easier. You chop it up and add water. See how tough this is? You definitely don't want to eat this okra. I think this is how okra gets a bad name, because people are trying to eat okra that's too tough. And yes, it is slimy, but there are things you can do to mitigate that. So once you've chopped up your okra, put them into a glass jar, and I'm going to cover this with water. I'll put this in the fridge for at least 8 hours or overnight, and then the okra water will be ready. Here's a batch I made yesterday. You're gonna pour this and strain out all of the okra and the seeds. So once this okra is out, I've had people tell me that they go ahead and eat this, fry it up and eat it. I usually will just feed this to my worms. This is the part you're after. This okra water still has all of those health benefits, and so you can add it to water. I use 1 part okra water, 2 parts water, add in some lemon or honey. It's delicious. You can also add it to smoothies or soup. It will thicken up both of those, but it's really easy to use. Once you've got it, it can keep in the refrigerator for 3 or 4 days. My favorite thing to do is to pour some into my water bottle. This already has some ice in here. I'm going to add in just a little bit of lemon. Let's try it. It really doesn't change the flavor that much. You can taste the lemon. It's rich in soluble fiber, vitamin C, antioxidants. It helps boost your immune system. It helps regulate your blood sugar. It can help lower cholesterol and acts as a digestive aid. If you're not a fan of okra's slimy texture, there's a couple of things you can do. Cook it at high heat. Grill or roast or pan fry in high heat. That negates that sliminess. You can also use an acid like lemon juice, tomatoes, or vinegar. My grandma was from Mississippi and we grew up eating okra. Here's how I like to make it. Use just the young tender okra and slice it up pretty thin. Once it's all cut up, put it into a colander. You're going to give it a quick rinse under the water. Once it's rinsed off, I'm gonna sprinkle it with cornmeal, give it a good dusting. You want it all to be coated. Okay, you're gonna heat up a cast iron skillet and add some coconut oil. Let that oil get nice and hot. Just enough to thickly coat the bottom of the pan there. Tell if it's ready. Yeah, you sprinkle some water, it's a poppin'. Okay, so now we're gonna put the okra in. Try and get it in a single layer. The only seasoning I add to this is some salt, so I'll sprinkle some on now, and then a little bit when it's all done too. So it cooks a little bit longer than you think it will. You want it to get nice and brown. Oh, it smells good. If you don't want to pan fry it, you could also throw it in an air fryer, and that is really good. Try roasting okra, throw it on the grill, anything with high heat. That's the secret to cutting down on that sliminess of okra, and then it'll have that delicious flavor. You want to let it cook, make sure the heat's high enough. Getting that okra nice and tender. If you ever get too much okra, which can happen, rinse it off, slice it up, put it in freezer bags, and then you can pull it out and have fried okra or whatever kind of okra whenever you want. Back to the okra, it's looking good. Oh yeah, okay, it's getting that nice color. You want to let it get nice and brown. It's gonna have good flavor. And it's so tender. I'm just gonna dump it out there. Gonna hit it with some salt. This is our favorite. It's got crispy outside, sweet and tender inside with that delicious okra flavor. Love it. There's your full guide to growing, cooking, and using okra. My Mississippi grandma will be proud. If you have recipes that you'd like to share, I would love to try them. If you haven't tried okra yet, promise me you'll give this a try. Should I just say what it is? I lost it. Really?
No.
I can't stop eating.